Hey, what's up, nerds? Paul Contes here again. It is a new year, and I definitely want to try and put out more content this year and be out on a more regular basis. I've been sort of slacking in content production, and what I've realized is that it's actually something I really enjoy doing. And I just sort of sit and muse on my own a lot, so I might as well share it more with you guys. So, general topic that I'm thinking of doing is, and maybe this is going to develop into a series, maybe not, maybe this is just going to be me spitballing into a one-off episode, but anywho, really I'm thinking about list building theory and what goes into building your list and the reasons why certain units are present in evaluating your different choices. That, I think, is a major key to building a successful list in Age of Sigmar. You have a lot of different units, and something I see a lot of folks do is either just slap together a list with the models that they have available or the models that they like, or they kind of grab a battalion and go and don't really think about what the different roles of units are in that battalion. So there's some basic concepts that you really want to think about when you're building your list. With every single model or every single unit that I put into my list, I always try and think about, what does this unit do? What is its role? Why is it here? And how does it fit in with all of the other models and units that I'm including in my army? Usually I begin with some sort of core central concept for the list that I'm working on. Something a little bit more complex than win the game. That's another series that I'm planning on doing sometime in the near future about different list archetypes for the free people in particular. But you want to start with some sort of archetype or concept. What does this army do? Something that I commonly play is using the Brotherhood of Knights battalion and using that as sort of my core hammer and anvil force, and then building up the rest of my army around that. And what does that do? In that particular situation, I have my chaff units and my aggressive units already selected. They're going to be powered up by a battalion and other buffs. I build up the other buffs in the list to complement that, and then fill out the rest of the list to fill in any holes to create a nice balanced list that has that strength of attack. There's a lot of different roles that a unit can play in your Age of Sigmar army. It could be simply, this unit is designed to hold an objective. You could have your characters and other units that are buffing your units so that your combat units have more strength, or your shooting units have more strength. Terms that are really commonly used are hammer and anvil units. Your hammer units are your really strong, aggressive units that are meant to go and break the enemy lines and really do a lot of damage. That is really a key. That's something that kind of came out of 8th edition and earlier editions of Warhammer. It's a little bit less effective in theory with the hammer and anvil theory in Age of Sigmar because of the retreat rules, but nevertheless, they're still definitely present. Equally important are your anvil units, and these are the units that just get in the way of what your opponent is trying to do. They're typically high armor, high wound count units that are going to get up in your opponent's face. They're going to get into combat, and they're going to prevent your opponent's units from being effective on more valuable targets. A lot of times I try and like to make these relatively cheap units so that you end up with like a point differential in effectiveness, that, you know, my 80-point unit of Free Guild Swordsmen are going to hold up, you know, a 200 or 300 point unit for a couple of turns and prevent it from really doing all that much. That's really what I like to try and think about with an anvil unit. It's taking something cheap and tough and stopping your opponent's more valuable targets from reaching maximum combat effectiveness. There's other roles that things can play, certainly. Shooting units, always very important. They're in Age of Sigmar now because our game is, when you're playing match play, is very scenario oriented. You have to think about how you want to use your shooting units. Are they going to be taking down your opponent's aggressive units? Are they going to guard objectives? Are they going to go after heroes, etc.? What role does that unit play, and how do you want to design that unit for maximum effectiveness? You know, I've seen all those lists of, the 40-strong force of orc arrow boys, and I just say to myself, okay, they're throwing a lot of arrows. I can't really tell what they mean to be targeting with those, other than attacking from a distance. I like to think about more the precision of what you're going to be targeting with those particular units. Utility in general is very valuable, something that can be used in multiple different facets. A great example is one of my favorite units out of the Free People, the Bretonnian Lord on a Pegasus. He can fill so many roles. It is just fantastic. He can hold objectives. He can be a mini hammer unit to go out and clear away chaff really effectively. And he's really fast, so he can get into your opponent's backfield, clear out war machines, go after their heroes, all sorts of things. He is, at very least, a pretty big speed bump, a 3-up save character with some decent attack power, actually some really good attack power, and 5 wounds to hold him up. So he's really filling a lot of different roles depending on the game that you're playing. That's one other aspect that I like to think about too, is not just in general what does this one unit, what role does it fill? It's in what different scenarios and what different situations do I use this unit differently? You know, my Free Guild Swordsmen, just as an example, they are great for holding objectives, but when you have a situation where they're not able to hold objectives, or you have multiple units of them and one is securely holding an objective, what do you do with the rest? Well, then they make a great anvil unit. They can run up and stop your opponent's advance very effectively because they have such a high save. So these are just sort of a few ideas that kind of just going off the top of my head about list building and creation. There's a lot more complex ideas that you can work in, and big archetypes that can really begin to be an overwhelming core to your force. One thing that I definitely caution people with is the use of battalions. Just because a battalion exists doesn't mean you can use it, or you should use it. And just because a battalion exists, it doesn't mean that it's your best choice or it's a good use of points. The Bretonnian battalions are an excellent example of this. They're just terrible. They're a waste of points. And they force you into using units that you might not otherwise use. That's one of the sort of tricky parts of those battalions, is that they are not necessarily going to allow you to build the list you want to build. You're kind of getting taxed with those sometimes, with additional units that you have to buy to complete the battalion that you wouldn't otherwise be taking. So you're ending up with units that might not have a really clear role in your army that you have to take. So it's almost like that battalion costs even more points than the face value. So that's definitely something to be careful of. That's why I really don't like the Free People Battalion that much. You're forced to take just a ton of units. I really wish there was some smaller options out there. It's a powerful ability, but I'm not sure it's necessarily worth it. That's just sort of some ideas off the top of my head that I'm musing about this morning. That's kind of all I really have for now. More videos to come. I think I'm going to be bringing back the chatting in the car series. I should really give this thing a name. Mark Roserwater already stole Drive to Work, so I can't use that. But anywho, I will be signing off for now. Hope you all have a splendid day, and I will talk to you later.